All right, today we're going to talk about the coronavirus. We're going to look at a couple different stories, mainstream stories that are being put out, and try to use some discernment when assessing them. So let's get started with this CNN news video that was released today, and it's titled "Nurse with Coronavirus Makes Emotional Plea."
Let you behind the curtain a little bit. We introduced you to somebody early on in this situation called Karen Goheen. She's a nurse in Washington. She was right in the epicenter. Her mother was in that elder care center where they had the outbreak in the beginning. She couldn't get to her mom, and then she found out she had coronavirus, and she was home, and she was vital, and she was great. Well, after we talked to her, she took a turn for the worse. And she went into the hospital, and she was on a ventilator, and we were so worried, and we couldn't get her. And she meant so much in terms of our overcoming this. And thank God she came out of the hospital. She got back in touch with us, and I'm able to bring you back tonight. I hope it means
how
nearly as
convenient.
much to Karen and to all of you as it did to
That's
me and the team
insincere.
to see her face. Karen Goheen, it is so good to have you back. You look great. I was so worried for you when you went in. So brave, worried about your
Okay,
father who was.
so obviously they're trying to put you in a mindset of feeling remorseful or not remorseful, sympathetic. This is a story about a person who allegedly contracted the coronavirus yet overcame it. She's a nurse supposedly, and I guess she was in contact with CNN, giving them some news about what she was seeing from her perspective as a nurse, and then she contracted the virus, and now he's stating that she's coming back or doing an interview after the contraction and overcoming. So let's continue.
Sick, worried about your brother who was sick. You couldn't see your mother. How you doing now?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot better. I'm still having a little bit of trouble catching my breath sometimes, but pretty close to 100%.
I'm gonna just say to me,
And it
she
got
doesn't
a
seem
little
sincere.
scary there. Being in the
It was
hospital,
scary.
you're used
Yeah.
to it as a nurse, but what was the experience like as a patient?
Well, I have to just correct you some, Chris.
Go ahead.
I didn't make it to a ventilator. I was on oxygen, but I
Oxygen.
didn't
Okay.
have to go on a ventilator.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank God. Thank
So,
God.
but when you can't even stand up at your bedside and get to, the toilet at the side of the bed without being short of breath, it was pretty scary.
Look, it's important for people to know that because a lot of people are still being really nonchalant about this.
Yeah.
And your
This is
father, how is he? He was in.
I'm noticing a good deal of NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. So, you know, it's trying to basically manipulate your mind into believing something through certain words and body movements. So that's what it's coming off as to me, at least. It doesn't seem genuine. Let's continue.
The hospital. He had it as well. How's he doing?
Well, he's coming right along. He's pretty tired too, but he's stable. He's looking good. Yeah, we're really encouraged and really happy.
Also, notice how she looks to the left when she says that. I'm not even sure exactly what that signals, but there is different motions that your eyes make when you're, supposedly telling the truth or lying or thinking of something, or it's signs to it. So if anybody knows about that, maybe that should hold some weight as well.
We've so far all made it out.
Good. I know he's with you. I know you're being able to take care of him again. I know how much that means to you. Now, the mystery was your mom. You couldn't get information. We were banging on the door of that place trying to get them to open up and help you learn more. They tested your mom once, twice. What did you figure out?
Well, she was tested once and was negative, and then she was tested again and it was positive, which made us really scared. But
Okay,
we went
that's
and visited.
important right there, because that either means they're getting false negatives, which also means that if you're getting false negatives, you're most likely also getting false positives, and then that completely takes any credibility or integrity away from your so-called test. That's an important point to point out.
Her today. She looks really good. She's had no symptoms since she was tested positive.
Look at those
So
two.
she looks great. We're hoping to get her home maybe this next week so that my mom and dad can be together again and so they can hold hands and keep each other company through whatever is to come next.
Oh, Karen, you're opening up our hearts here, and it's just beautiful to
This
see the
is
family come
cringy,
through
man.
this together to this point. God willing, by the grace, everything stays good going forward. And I'd love to get your take on something. This message, Karen, that what, they're going to have to be sacrifices here, and some of the old people may have to, take it on the chin for the
So here we go.
country,
Let's
so
go.
that we can open the economy again and get people back to work. It sounds so cruel to me, just so against what we're about. And as someone who's just been fighting and watching your parents fight, and you know how much life they have left and what they mean to your family, what do you think of that kind of message?
All right, here comes the emotional plea. All right, I'm gonna call it before I even see it. You saw him give her the setup, so it's already obvious what's going to take place. But basically, what they're about to do is make an emotional plea for people who are saying, "Oh, it's just taking out old people whose immune systems are weak and they're going to die soon anyway." And what they want from you is to be like, "Oh no, every life it matters," which it does. Yet you can't allow an agenda to cause fear and emotionally manipulate you. All right, so that's what I want to make obvious. Yes, we should care about every life, but we can't cherry pick what's most important. There's people dying from cancer, heart disease, and many other ailments at rates higher than people who are dying from the coronavirus. So let's continue.
Well, I think that message is wrong. I think the problem is that if you let all these people get sick because we're not being careful, that's going to be really bad for the economy too. That's going to be really bad for our healthcare system. It costs a lot to have a lot of people in the hospital. There is no dollar amount you can put on people's lives. You have to do everything you can to prevent this virus from spreading. The economy will return. The economy will improve over time. We've seen it time and time and again. We're a strong country. We have to pull together, care for each other. We would never get through this if we don't. And we can't sacrifice the lives of our wise elders for the economy. Okay, I totally disagree with that idea.
Okay,
We
so there was the message. Don't put the economy over the lives of our elderly, which in theory and which in all reality makes sense. But here's the problem. That happens all the time with many diseases, cancers, heart diseases, even car accidents. So that's not a viable, novel case. We allow many lives to go by the wayside at the cost of the economy. So that's not a good enough excuse from people who allow these things to happen. So we're going to get more into this. We're going to check out some other videos to see exactly why this is the message that is being pushed. All right. So I just searched coronavirus and I'm just kind of looking through the top YouTube headlines. Like I said, that video was called "Nurse with Coronavirus Makes Emotional Plea." Of course, New York City is trying to close down its streets and its cities. Orange County down in Florida, where I live. I live right outside of Orange County, but they're putting a mandatory stay in home order in place starting March 26, 2020 at 11 p.m. I believe. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to find out which one of these videos. All right, we're going to check out this video up here. It's called "Why a Corona Vaccine or Coronavirus Vaccine Could Be Developed in Record Time."
Vaccines typically take years to develop, but there's reasons to be hopeful that we could have a vaccine against the coronavirus pandemic in record time. There are more than 40 vaccine candidates being developed currently, according to the WHO. At a basic level, the evolution of vaccines, we've gone from testing a weakened or killed version of the virus to injecting a protein that can fight against the virus. When we think of the SARS outbreak in 2002, 2003, it took about 20 months to go from genetic sequence to that first patient being dosed in a first clinical trial. Leading the pack is Moderna, an upstart, buzzy biotech that developed a vaccine candidate that has already started a clinical trial. That is record-breaking pace in about 2 months' time. So this happened about 10 times as quick. How did Moderna do it? They have a technology platform called messenger RNA. I talked to the CEO a few weeks ago. He sees this as the evolution of vaccine development is particularly geared for speedy development of vaccines. Now Moderna just injects genetic instructions.
Now, I just want to bring up an important point before we continue to this video. Leading up to the coronavirus outbreak, for the past few years, there have been heavy debates on both sides of the vaccine argument. They have what they call the anti-vaxxers, which are really just people who have questions regarding the vaccinations, have questions regarding the injuries they cause, the ingredients that are put into them, and the mandate that goes along with having a human being vaccinated, or any life form for that matter. So just realize that the whole vaccine mandatory concept is not a new thing. It's been in place for a long time, and they want more and more people to accept the idea that that vaccines are not optional. Okay, so let's continue.
It has your own cells create copies of the protein, the antibodies that can fight against the virus. On the flip side, there are no approved mRNA vaccines on the market, so this is an unproven technology that will be tested in real time against the coronavirus. There's about 6 or 7 companies that have put out timelines for coronavirus vaccines where they're hoping to start clinical trials in 2020. So those candidates will enter the clinic in the spring or summer for the most part, and have data coming a few months after that. That initial data will focus more on safety, making sure these vaccines don't cause side effects and they're tolerable in humans. Additional studies have to be run that test if it actually works, if getting the vaccine can prevent infections of the coronavirus. Some of the biggest drug makers in the industry, including Sanofi and Johnson & Johnson, have also jumped in the mix. Johnson & Johnson is looking at starting a clinical trial in November. Sanofi has estimated they can start a clinical trial in early 2021. So those are much longer timelines as far as starting a clinical trial. They kind of envision a tortoise and a hare situation where they have proven technology, they've done this many times, they have the resources of big pharma to pump out this to a mass market of hundreds of millions of people if needed. So those approaches are also worth watching, and they're moving as fast as they can on that front. Vaccine development is really expensive, and with infectious diseases, it's hard to know the return on investment for these companies. So there's a big funding gap.
So it still comes back to money. You're looking for a return on investment for your vaccine, which means there's a conflict of interest. If you realize your vaccine is hurting someone, you're not going to pull it because you realize that'll cut your profits. That'll cut your ROI, your return on investment. All right. So don't assume that they're doing these for reasons of, we have to save a population. We have to, as I said in the previous video, we have to care for our elderly. We have to do what it takes to protect them at whatever cost. The economy is no exchange for the life of one of our elderly. Well, what did he just say? These vaccinations are in place to have a return on investment. It's a move for money, for control.
With vaccine development that remains unanswered. It's worth considering the case of Merck, one of the biggest drug makers in the world. They have the only FDA-approved Ebola vaccine. That took several years of clinical trials at unprecedented scale. Merck had to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to get this over the finish line, and it's essentially a net loss for the company financially. One group that's really helped accelerate the pace of vaccine development.
Well, it's a net loss until you make it a net win. Because now we know that its life cycle isn't finished. As far as I heard, they're actually trying to see if the Ebola vaccine will work for the coronavirus, the COVID-19. So don't assume that just because they spent $100 million on finding this vaccine that it's not going to be used over and over and over.
It's called CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness of Innovations. This was started by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with a lot of other
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Okay? These people are eugenicists. Okay? They're responsible for many vaccine injury deaths around the world. Deaths in just injuries in general. You got to look into that, man. These people aren't here for your health. If you want to be healthy, you got to take your own responsibility for that. Bill and Melinda Gates isn't there for that, all right? Do your research.
Philanthropic support in 2017. It's backed and funded the progression of candidates, including Moderna's, as well as several other vaccines in the early stages. There's a lot of unknowns surrounding a coronavirus vaccine. Not just is it safe and effective, but when we get to that point, or if we get to that point with a vaccine candidate, what happens next? How much data will the FDA require? Could the FDA offer an emergency approval? What would pricing and accessibility look like? Particularly if a small biotech like Moderna or some of these other small companies that are progressing candidates into the clinic in 2020, if one of those vaccines is found to be safe and effective, how can a small biotech scale that up to deliver a vaccine to hundreds of millions of people? It still remains to be seen if these companies need to run much larger clinical trials enrolling tens of thousands of people. Who will pay for that? How much will it cost? And these companies, which are for-profit pharmaceutical companies, can they make a return?
They're just talking about how it's a business. Vaccines are a business, okay? If they want a return on the investment, it's a business, and its main interest is making money, not your health. Let's move on to another video. All right. We're going to put in coronavirus, and we're going to put in COVID-19 concerns. We're going to take a look at that angle of the videos that are out right now. Okay, so right here they're going to say now, 9 hours ago, a 21-year-old with no underlying health concerns died from COVID-19. Let's go.
Now, a 21-year-old woman has died after testing positive for COVID-19. Chloe Middleton is thought to be the youngest person to die in the UK after testing positive for the condition. Her aunt said that she had no underlying health conditions. In a Facebook post, Chloe's mother, Diane Middleton, said, "To all the people out there that thinks it's just a virus, please think again. Speaking from a personal experience..."
Okay. We're starting to get the propaganda heavier and heavier. So apparently the mother of this 21-year-old girl put out a message on Facebook, basically another plea telling people to take it serious because her daughter, who's only 21 with no previous health concerns, died from the virus after testing positive. Right? Her statement reads, "To all the people out there that think this is just a virus, please think again. Speaking from a personal experience, this so-called virus has taken the life of my 21-year-old daughter." But let's continue.
So-called virus has taken the life of my 21-year-old daughter. Well, let's talk to Sky's Noel Phillips. Noel, this will cause great concern to many people, won't they? Because it really has been sort of drummed into us that it's people who are over 70 and it's people who have underlying conditions.
And another thing, you need to recognize these news anchors are actors, okay? This fake sympathy is not real, it's not genuine. And you can see these people jump in and out of stories with no emotional integrity. Whatever they're told to express is what they express. Let's continue.
Ones that are affected the worst.
And I think that's the big concern. Chloe was just 21 years old. As you said, her family have taken to Facebook to release a statement and to pay tribute to the 21-year-old. They have stressed the point that she had no underlying health conditions. Her auntie, Emily Mystery, has also paid tribute to her, along with her mom, Diane Middleton, who, as we can only imagine right now, must be distraught, must be very distressed with losing her 21-year-old daughter. But I'll just read you a quick statement from her auntie. She said simply, "My loved ones are going through the most unimaginable pain. We are shattered beyond belief." Her sister Amy is also taken to Facebook. She said, "My kids couldn't have had a more loving, crazy nutcase for an auntie, and we wouldn't have had it any other way." she adored them, and they certainly adored her back. Now, we understand the family, who are from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire, are also urging people on Facebook to follow government guidelines and stay indoors. They have stressed
And
that.
there's the message. Okay, there's no transparency to this case of someone passing away from the COVID-19 virus, but they want to push it as an emotional plea so that they can continue to tell you why they feel it's important that you stay in your home and self-isolate, social distance. All right? Those are the messages. You got to pay attention. You can't just fall into the line of feeling emotional and then adjusting your behavior for that. You have to ask critical questions about if this is a real case taking place. Literally, ask the people around you. Do you know anyone with the virus? Do you know of anyone who says they know of anyone with the virus? All right? Because if we all kind of crowdsource that information and it comes back that none of us are getting positives or any proof of anyone with coronavirus, then that's a question that needs to be answered and addressed. Let's continue.
Chloe was only 21. She had no other underlying histories, and I think it's worth us stressing that as well. And they're just from wanting to send a message to people who are not following social distancing rules to remember that they should take this very, very seriously. And it's worth remembering that older people are more likely to succumb to this virus. But Chloe's death will be of some concern to public health officials.
All right, so another puff piece, whether it's a real event or fake, I don't know, but yet they're trying to use the emotional plea to change your course of action. They feel not enough people are taking it serious, not staying home. People are still moving about and going out, and they want to restrict the movement of people. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, that's what's taking place. The restriction of your movement. They're attempting to control it. Let's take a look at one more video real quick. All right, here's one saying inmates are being released from Harris County Jail over COVID-19 concerns.
There is one aspect of this pandemic that is raising some eyebrows. The release of some inmates from the Harris County Jail. Our Grace White is downtown with this story.
Here at the Harris County Jail, there has not been a confirmed case of the coronavirus, but that hasn't stopped one attorney from arguing his client was at risk. Behind bars at the Harris County Jail.
I can't imagine how victims' families would feel.
The coronavirus is starting to have an impact on court cases.
I think it's obviously, from our perspective, COVID-19 related. And where it stops, I don't know.
Andy Kahn is the director of victim services for Crime Stoppers. He says he's seeing violent offenders being released on PR bonds, meaning they don't have to pay a dime as long as they show up for court.
Some of the cases that I've been picking up, like I said, are extremely disturbing.
One case even got Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo tweeting, David Cruz, a man charged with murder, released on a PR bond after his attorney said in court documents, quote, the current COVID-19 virus is certainly going to strike the Harris County jail population and spread like wildfire among inmates.
And I'm scratching my head going through all these cases going, this makes zero sense.
Khan's concern is how many more cases are coming.
Yeah, you're right. It does make zero sense. How's a pandemic just going to start out of nowhere? These people have been living on this earth their whole lives, never seen a pandemic. Yet now all of a sudden there's a pandemic and everyone has to follow social norms and, control mechanisms. Damn near in fucking. This is pretty much martial law. Once you start telling people that they don't have freedom of movement, that's martial law. So we're going to look at this last video. It says pharmacists concerned about demand during COVID-19 pandemic. And then we're going to look at patients concerned after dentist's suspected COVID-19 death.
With the evolution of COVID-19, pharmacists in Canada are becoming increasingly concerned about the country's drug supply and what impacts the virus will have on these meds in the long run.
When we first heard about the outbreak making its way to Canada, our first thought was, how are we going to deal with the surge of demand from patients coming in?
First, there was the mass buying at grocery stores. Now it's the new reality for pharmacists working through COVID-19, saying the same is happening with prescription medications.
We started to see our two wholesalers, two major ones, start to show shortages and back orders of not just acute medications like inhalers for respiratory conditions, but also insulin and also chronic medications.
All right, regarding the hoarding phenomenon, like I said, I live in Florida, so we see these when hurricanes often approach. As soon as the rhetoric about a hurricane potentially hitting your city comes, everyone starts buying out the supermarkets and the gas stations. Now, this one we haven't seen as much gas because people are being told to stay inside, so they're not really using gas. Yet we see a run on all products for the most part in supermarkets, especially the toilet paper, the water, and the canned goods. All right, obviously that serves as an economic boom for a select group of people, but during this cycle we can see that they're actually allowing a lot of the economic financial world to take a large hit. So there are questions regarding what is that going to lead to? Are they reshaping the economic system that we're living in? Are we going to be introduced to a new world currency? These are questions that I'm not sure the answers to.
Patients can't go without. And the Canadian Pharmacists Association says they've been seeing a tremendous surge in demand across the country.
Especially if we look at China and India and we think proactively, if 70% approximately of active ingredients come from there, and they start to cut down on exports, which after the next 3 months we expect them to.
But Joseph Banous, who's also the co-founder of the Pharmacists Society of Ontario, is calling for calm, saying pharmacists are already taking measures themselves to ensure no one gets left behind, including limiting supplies for 30 days.
We'd happily give everybody ample supply if we knew that was there, but until we have that assurance from regulators and from wholesalers and from manufacturers, we just have to be judicious about the drug supply in Ontario and in Canada.
The province says they've heard reports that people are asking for refills of up to 6 months.
We want to make sure that everyone can have access to the medications that they need. So we are looking at 30-day refills just to make sure that the supply will remain available for everyone who does need it.
For now, Banous also says...
Gotta make sure people are taking their drugs, don't you? Damn pharmaceuticals ain't good for nothing. They kill more people than they help. Alright, last video. Patients concerned after dentist suspected COVID-19 death.
You can ha, or you can... Here's to the original social media.
Ad real quick. Let's get out of that.
Dennis Vincent's practice has been shut for over a week now. News of his death just reaching his patients.
You went to see him and he asked about you. He truly cared about human beings.
Friends say the 64-year-old was in great health and enjoyed skiing with his 2 boys.
He never missed a day of work. I missed more than he did in those 2 and a bit years that I worked with him.
Vincent, along with 15,000 people, attended the Pacific Dental Conference in early March. 10 days after the event, health officials warned attendees to self-isolate after a cluster of COVID-19 cases were traced back to the conference.
We know of 32 people who became ill after attending that conference here in BC, and all of those were investigated by public health. I don't know the cause of death of this individual.
The coroner is investigating whether Vincent died from COVID-19.
What?
And all of those were investigated by public health. I don't know the cause of death of this individual.
The coroner is...
So they're saying that this guy who attended this conference, this dentist conference, the video says he died of COVID-19. Well, it says suspected. Now she comes on and says she doesn't know. So what is this piece here for? Sheer speculation.
Investigating whether Vincent died from COVID-19, but friends say in the week before his death, he was showing symptoms and getting worse. A friend who saw him for dental work after the conference is wondering why no one alerted him about possible exposure as a patient.
I'm feeling I'm feeling very careless myself for having gone. Like I'm really, really concerned about that. The good thing is that I'm not feeling sick at all.
Health officials maintain those who needed to be contacted have been.
He was an awesome member of this community that's treated countless families that we know, and he will be missed.
Meanwhile, his patients are just stunned by the news that their favorite dentist is gone. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, North Vancouver, BC.
All right, so that was just one more story. But what I wanted to illustrate here is that they're basically trying to pull on your heartstrings. Okay, they use fear to try to get people to stay in. Not enough people succumb to the fear. Now they're trying to use empathy of the death of people by giving you their stories. Also trying to use celebrities in this agenda as well to try to garner your sympathy. Just stay vigilant. Use discernment. I'm not saying automatically assume that the whole thing is fake and staged, but don't go making it easy for someone to run an agenda or a program on you. Pay attention and just stay safe. All right? Y'all take it easy.